The Bahamas.
Global 99.5 FM reminds our listeners that the views and opinions expressed on this show are those of the host and guests and not necessarily the opinions of the owners of Global Communications Network and the operators of this.
Today can be the turning point in your life by making a simple decision.
Fundamental questions of navigation. Where am I? Where am I going? And how do I get there from here?
I invite the leaders of our planet to ask themselves these three questions before they make any crucial decisions.
But if you don't make decisions, you're going to stay right where you are.
We are all map makers.
We are in a time of transition.
If we're going to change, we have to change the direction that we're going.
Our planet needs leaders who know where they want to go.
When we change the direction we're going, then we want to make sure we're going in the right direction.
Leaders who can see the big picture.
Because if we're not, we're going to either go backwards or we're going to stay where we are.
Recognizing the psychological and the spiritual shifts and changes that need to be made, often from the inside to the outside.
To be able to shape your future, you have to be willing and able to change your paradigm.
Complex journeys require navigation. The path to the truth is one such journey. This is your GPS. Hairstyling services provided by J.D. Edwards Salon and Spa, Palmdale Shopping Plaza, Madera Street. Accessories provided by Chevette Williamson Jewelry. Standout jewelry for standout women.
Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to GPS Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. I'm your host, Michelle Malcolm. As always, it's a pleasure to be in your company. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing a portion of your afternoon with us here on GPS. Before I dive into the show, I want to say a huge congratulations to my friend, Leslie Miller Bryce, and the entire team that she put together, because she kept stressing every time somebody congratulated her. It's a team thing. It's a team thing. For the stellar job you guys did in preparing and executing the independence celebrations over the past several days. You know, Leslie was trained by MBO when it comes to planning events, just so you all know. MBO taking some credit for that. But in all seriousness, huge congratulations, Les, to you and the entire team of artists and artisans and musicians and dancers and writers and actors and everybody that you guys put together for this 49th anniversary of independence celebration. We even saw some, Bahamians have become used to, you can see the same things when you go to Clifford Park, right? You pretty much could close your eye and tell what's coming up next. But Miss Leslie introduced something new to the Bahamian public by way of Burton Wallace and the team from Movi, which is also an affiliate of MBO, just for the record. They produce the Miss Bahamas World Pageant every year. So we know their work. So that's how Leslie know to go to Burton and his team, because we know they can get it done. And they came up with a fantastic drone display in midair. And people were blown away, and rightfully so, because, we believe in dreaming big, she said she went to she saw this on the Olympics, and she saw it at some other event she attended. And she said, well, why can't we do that in the Bahamas? Why can't we have a drone show in the Bahamas? So she came home and she found talented Bahamians who could actually pull it off, and pull it off they did. So kudos to you, Les, the entire team that you guys put together, all of the producers, the writers, the actors, the dancers, the musicians, the playwrights, everybody involved. You guys did a phenomenal job, and y'all have a uphill battle to top this for the 50th, but I know you will. We know you will. So congratulations to you all for a job well done. So now, time to jump into the show. You know the drill. Every Tuesday, we deal with a hot topic that is trending. And today will be no different. But I decided to bring into the studio with me a guest today who could help us break down this hot topic, because this one a little too hot for me to handle by myself. And even though we're going to want you guys to call, and I thought I would have someone here who could really help us to understand the magnitude of this topic that we're going to be discussing today. And the topic that we are going to be discussing today is the NIB crisis, because in case you're living under a rock and you don't know what's going on with NIB, we are hearing that if something doesn't change in the short term, within another 6 years or so, that fund will be no more. It will have been depleted. And obviously, that would be a bad, bad thing for so many of us Bahamians who seriously rely on the funds that they get from national insurance just to help them to survive. So here to help us break it all down is none other than Matt Aubry from the Organization for Responsible Governance. Matt, welcome once again to GPS. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Good to have you as always, because I know you're going to bring some good perspective. All right, so let's begin by playing clip number one. This is Mr. LaRota. He was speaking to members of the press about this whole situation of NIB being in the condition that it is in. So, Jason, pull up clip number one, please, and let's get that started.
For the past 20 years, the National Insurance Board, or the actuarial reports, there's at least 11 of them now, was speaking to the reality of the fund being depleted. The fact is, as I said earlier on, I've heard the report is now in the public domain. The reality is, years ago we had about 13, almost 14 people that was paying towards the benefits of one person. That number has reduced to, I think, less than half of that, and I think by 2040 it should be about 3.9 persons to one pensioner. We are paying out much more money than we are taking in, and that is the reality. People are living longer, they're receiving more benefits. The ceiling has been raised from $400 in income per week to over $700, and I think there's only been one increase. And so we are where we are. The Prime Minister, who leads the government, has made a statement with regards to that. A charge has been given to the board, I mentioned yesterday, to find innovative ways, but I'm just stating the fact that it is right now. I think it may have been exacerbated because a lot of money was paid out during the pandemic, and so we are where we are with that reality.
Okay, so just to put this all into perspective, the International Labor Organization's latest actuarial report on NIB, dated January of 2022, revealed that NIB's contribution rate must be raised by 2% beginning this month, July, and continue to be raised every 2 years until 2036 in order to be sustainable. Now, as we would have heard Mr. LaRota say, this problem didn't just start this month. This has been brewing now for decades. And we have to ask the question, how did we get here? So our news put together a really good report on, setting the stage for what we're going to be talking about today, what needs to happen going forward to avoid a collapse of the fund. Let's go to that report. That's clip number 2.
Increasing the retirement age, drastic cuts, and increased NIB rates are all potential measures on the table to get the national insurance funds out of dangerous waters.
The fund is under extreme pressure from the fact that we are paying out much more than we are taking in.
The National Insurance Board's latest actuarial report reveals NIB would have to increase contribution rates by 2% in July and continue increases every 2 years until 2036, if it is to remain financially sustainable. Prior to Tuesday's cabinet meeting, State Minister Miles LaRota sharing how NIB finds itself in this financial position. He cites red flags as far back as 2002.
The reality is, years ago we had about 13, almost 14 people that was paying towards the benefits of one person. That number has reduced to, I think, less than half of that, and I think by 2040 it should be about 3.9 persons to one pensioner.
Also of note, some $250 million in unemployment benefits and assistance were paid out between COVID-19 and Hurricane Dorian claims. Prime Minister Philip Davis was asked about the findings of that report on returning home on Monday afternoon. His response was pretty much the same, saying this is not groundbreaking news to the government.
The report is nothing new. We expected the same report. They are the technocrats who are advising us. We are the political electorate. We have to find ways and means of softening any increases.
The report in question takes into account NIB's annual income, which comes from contributions and investment earnings. And this is insufficient to pay the annual expenditures. In a project between NIB and the International Labour Organization, they found in this report. The State Minister reminds the public that this report is a recommendation. Government will ultimately decide how much of the advice is implemented.
The report is actually a recommendation, and if you look down, it's basically saying for the fund to remain solvent, we're going to have to do different things. You're going to have to increase contributions, you're going to have to cut benefits, and you're going to have to increase the retirement age.
If NIB continues at its current payout rate, this report forecasts that the reserves will be depleted by 2028.
Mr. Aubry, when you hear that,
What comes to mind?
Well, I think what we can understand is that this is not a new issue, right?
Mhm.
This is not something that just caught us unawares. This is an issue that's been building for a long time,
Decades.
and those in charge of the fund have known or been, at least had access. But similar to what Minister of State LaRota spoke to back in the days, the then Minister Shane Gibson spoke about the very same issues. We've had ILL reports that came out most recently, but also the 2018 report and reports going past that have also spoken about this.
Mhm.
And that was prior to a Dorian, prior to COVID. So,
Exactly.
NIB spent out almost $100 million related to COVID, and then another $92 million that came from other government unemployment schemes. And the nature of what the fund was originally set up to be has also grown without necessarily an adjustment in how it's being fed.
Mhm.
So as the most recent a statement
Actual
that
report.
NIB came out of,
Mhm.
it said basically more money is
Going out.
is going out than is
Mhm.
coming in.
Mhm.
And this is also, I think, also important for folks to understand. This is not unique to the Bahamas.
Mm.
Across the world, countries are struggling. The U.S. is struggling with this same issue related to their Social Security.
Mhm.
There's a longer expectation of life. There's a greater need. There's not as much money being contributed into. So folks who have contributed for decades are now at this point of wondering, will it be there when I need it?
Mm.
Much less the folks that are just starting to get into the workforce now. And this being a level of security may not be there in the future. So I think two things, as you said. First, it is something that we have no more time to push down the road.
Right.
It doesn't, with the numbers that tell you 2028, and that's tomorrow.
Mhm.
That's so quick.
Mhm.
And two, that we're not going to fix it by virtue of doing what we've done before. Historically, it seems like if you knew that this thing was going to ultimately become unviable without adjustment, then what did that mean for folks in their capacity to make that adjustment?
Right.
In a heavily politicized environment like we have in the Bahamas,
Mhm.
you can see that subsequent governments didn't want to make some of those adjustments that might have been painful at the
Unpopular,
time
yes.
and unpopular because they risk potential political backlash.
Right.
So this has pushed us to a brink of where we are. And this is not, again, dissimilar to other things we've been doing in the Bahamas
Mhm.
along those lines with
Mhm.
policy. Things that are unpopular or might be painful to the immediate have then been pushed further and further down the line. And we're in a circumstance where now our choices are somewhat limited.
Which is why, we're gonna get into it in a little bit, but I think it's a bit hypocritical on the part of the opposition to say, well, you're not being realistic about dealing with this problem, as if they were realistic about dealing with the problem when they were in power.
No, I think this is one you can say we all own, right? We all own a bit of this. I think ultimately, again, these reports were not kept behind closed doors, right? These are things that the private sector had access to, the civil society had access to, and whether it be we didn't have the agenda or there were circumstances or challenges, things didn't get moved forward, and the public will didn't drive the political will. And I think that's where we potentially could do something different in this instance. What you're seeing is people are now scared, and unfortunately, they have a good right to be scared. When you're talking about time that is so short between something that you may very well depend upon. And remember, who does this affect most drastically? It is our most vulnerable.
Exactly.
It is our seniors. It is folks who have been disabled on the job. It is people who week to week, day to day may really depend upon this just for a basic level of livelihood. Well, they're now looking at, well, in 5 short years, 6 short years rather, what will that mean for me? Issues tend to not get better. They tend to compound. Costs and expenses are going up, and we're seeing a reduction of what this fund can generate. So it is going to cause a bit of angst and anxiety, but that can also be utilized by government and the private sector and civil society to work together to figure out what are the limited options that we have, and what of those is the choice that needs to be made. If there's inevitably going to be some pain related to fixing this, it's better that we all share and understand what those choices are, how we come to those choices, what the implications of those choices are, and then start to move forward. What we've seen in other countries, even in the Caribbean, is that countries have rallied forward and made changes and adjustments, but they've done so with a lot of public education, with a lot of understanding, so that I think there was even a referendum that was put forward, I think in Jamaica.
Well, referendums don't work here in the Bahamas.
No, we know that that's the case, but it speaks to the fact that there was a collective of the people that were able to make a decision.
Understood.
And when political will is driven by public will, you have a much more, you have a stronger bond between those and ownership on the policy changes that are made for long-term benefit.
Well, a part of the reason why referendi, is that the plural of referendum?
Referendum. I think it's still referendum.
Okay, referendum. The reason why they don't work in the Bahamas is because we politicize every doggone thing in this country. So if it is not my party that is bringing this forward, I'm going to find a reason to tell my supporters not to support it, even if I know within my heart that it is necessary for the nation. That's the problem that we have. Everything is painted in either red or yellow or whatever color your party supports. And unless my party has brought this forth, I'm not going to support it, which is crazy.
But I think that's the lesson at this stage. So thinking and following that pattern is what has gotten us where we are, where no party can take a tremendous political risk without possibly understanding they were going to get cast out. Even though that, because I mean, the Bahamian electorate has no problem stepping up and making a point that they are not happy by taking one group out and putting another group in. But when you get to this stage, that we all have seniors in our life, we all know folks who are on that level of disability. We all, at some point, we may be in a circumstance where this may be a critical. And again, we know in the Bahamas the polarization of those that have and those that have not has gotten even wider. So there's more folks that this will affect than even going back to 2018 or even before that, when it was an issue. So more people are going to be drastically affected if this thing isn't fixed. So that creates a space where whether my shirt is yellow, my shirt is red, my shirt is green, or my shirt is independent, whatever color that may be, you now have a stake in this. You now have a need and a desire for this to be addressed and fixed. There's a lot of finger pointing on what happened, where it went, where we're going. But at this stage, we know there's a pathway forward that needs to be forged. And I think everyone would have an interest on understanding what that is, what those choices are, and then what can be done to do that. So if it is adjusting, if there are policy changes that need to happen, which that might be one, some of the solution. If there are the extension of a retirement age, if there are additional incremental additions to the caps, if caps continue to get raised in certain instances, that's going to affect somebody day to day. That's going to affect somebody's, experience in their immediate. They need to understand and believe that if I make this sacrifice now, if I take this pain at this moment, it will benefit me in my dire time, those that I love, and more importantly, my children that will have a viable potential security net going forward. And that was the ultimate intent of this fund when it was set up, was to give people a level of security and understand that there is underlying something that is going to carry you forward when you might need it.
What is org's official position on this matter?
So we, and I think it's important to clarify what we are. We're not a watchdog organization. What we tend to do is we look at issues that repeatedly come up, and when you see them in the newspaper multiple times, then we're clearly not doing something for it. So our focus is, how can we change this in a long-term and sustainable way?
Mm-hmm.
And there are many avenues that can be followed through, but our goal would be developing one that brings together the stakeholders, including government. Government is a stakeholder, the private sector folks who are going to have to deal with it, an increment or an additional adjustment to a workforce that may be aging, the individuals that have to put forward their possibly increased contributions, all of these folks, as well as, most importantly, those that are most on the line. So our vulnerable citizens, those who are coming from our lower socioeconomic groups, those folks with disabilities who are affected. We need to bring those folks together. And so our official position is that if we consult the public and we bring them in at a formative stage, not wait until, okay, we've developed a plan, folks, here it is, you like it or you don't like it.
Right.
You're going to actually gain benefits. We may arrive at the same decision point, but we will all be there in a space where we're together, where we understand why we have to do that. A lot of our issues in the Bahamas follow that same arc. Is they're affected where we can only make certain levels of reforms driven by government because it's too risky to go too far. We've seen that with fiscal responsibility. We've seen that with things like anti-corruption. We've seen those types of issues, environmental changes, that it required us to go to the very brink before we had to make a change. Well, we've also seen some of our countries in the region that have gone to the brink and gone past the brink and been forced to make a change, whether it be Jamaica or Barbados, that had to change certain things because the IMF had to bail them out. Well, we have an opportunity with this fund at this stage to be able to hopefully control not only our descent, but hopefully level off and come up further, but together. So our focus is, how do we bring as many voices into this conversation? How do we provide as much education about not only what happened, but where can we go and what are realistic options that can be solved, that are not one government can save us and the other government, got us here, but how do we get on a track where, because if the people are into it, God forbid that we come up to another election and all of a sudden government changes again, as has happened. It's the people that are the constant. And if the people have a plan and things that they want prioritized, they can start to raise that voice just as loudly in terms of making sure those policies are kept and consistently managed. That's where we need to get to. That's our official position.
What is the danger if that does not happen?
So I think the simple danger becomes, government says we have a solution. Here's the solution, folks. And with no voice, particularly in a heavily political environment, you're going to have a large segment that may criticize it just because it's not of their political party. And when you get people that separate from their belief in policy, you see lack of compliance. Folks that say, well, this thing ain't going to serve me anyway, so I'm going to take care of my own thing. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to misreport here. I'm going to not do this. And we've had issues with enforcement on paying VAT and taxes and duties and things like that. So we see that. We also see that it can build the mistrust that has enveloped our country, our region, and our world right now, that the public has in government. IDB just did a study earlier this year that showed that the Latin American Caribbean region had the lowest trust in government in the entire world.
Wow.
Now, that was mostly Spanish speaking, but you can understand that probably in the English and French speaking Caribbean,
It
may not be far behind. So that means when making policy changes, government is best if it does so in a way that it embraces and builds trust. And trust requires transparency. Transparency requires consistency and openness and all of those things that have to forge, that if we're going to do something that might hurt at this point, let's make sure we did that. And that was not so dissimilar from what we saw with the VAT initiative when it was put forward. Something that was going to, affect people in their pockets, but they had the time and the process, and through groups like the Coalition for Responsible Governance, for responsible taxation, the time to understand what are the mechanisms, what would we do if, scenario A, what would we do with scenario B? People need to understand that, because when it comes down to it, it's going to affect them most directly.
All right. I'm having some issues. I keep getting knocked off the stream. Okay, let's take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the opposition's position on this, and what that means. And I want to ask a bit of a controversial question, because for years, people have been complaining that the contribution structure to NIB is not quite fair as it relates to everybody giving the same rate.
Right.
So I want to talk about that. And of course, a little later on in the show, we got to get a little controversy in there. So we got to talk about where all the money went. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Stay with us. This is GPS. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 hyperimmune egg powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for a rims, paints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Tracklight, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires, cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin, mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your Longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun. And we are back. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. Michelle Malcolm here, along with my guest today, Matt Aubry from the Organization for Responsible Governance. Now, listen, y'all, even though Matt is here in the studio, today is still a Hot Topic Tuesday. And the hot topic that we're dealing with today is NIB, but that does not mean that we don't want to hear from you, because you're still a vital part of the show. And so let's throw out the telephone numbers for you to call. The numbers are 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0271, or 326-0272, 326-0272. One more time, 326-0272. And we have a new WhatsApp number, which I thought I changed here, but clearly it didn't take, so let me edit that again. In the meantime, the new number is 801-0271, 801-0271 is the new WhatsApp number where you can send us a message if you wish to be a part of the broadcast. Not call, because we can't put WhatsApp calls on the air. But if you want to send us a message, that number again, 801-0271. Is that a caller? Yeah. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Good day. God bless, Michelle. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. Good day, Matt. How you doing?
Very well.
Wow. What an interesting topic. Let me be just a little introspective for the moment, and then I'll deal with the currency of the matter. When Bitcoin first came out in 2013, if NIB had vision or was allowed by the law to be innovative, if NIB had taken $1 million back then and bought Bitcoin at $1 per when it was 1 cent per coin, NIB would have owned at that point 100 million coins. And I just checked the price online. Bitcoin is just under $19,000 per coin. So let's say if that value was $10,000 today, if NIB had purchased in that scenario that I just put, NIB would have had $1 trillion. $1 trillion on its as an asset on its balance sheet. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this, Michelle and Matt, firstly, is NIB by law allowed to make such investments? Do any of you know?
I think they're. I'm not sure about law, but I know based on their protocols, their investment strategy needs to be very moderate. And by and large, the investment model that they've used is focused on government. So I'm not sure within the private side if they could do anything out that progressive, I guess.
Okay, and I accept that because I don't know exactly what the law says. So I take your response, Matt. But even at today's price, well, not too high anyway. But my thing is, and Michelle indicated it before the break, one of the reasons I believe that NIB is in the trouble it's in today is simply because government, in my humble opinion, has borrowed so much money from the fund and has not paid it back yet, or has had a problem paying it back over the years. I've never once heard in any budget debate where allocations were made for government to pay monies back to NIB that government had borrowed from NIB into the consolidated fund. Have any of you ever heard that?
No, the Fiscal Responsibility Act is really specifically around repaying the debt, but not debt as specified to NIB or the state-owned.
But is not local or national debt still debt, Matt?
Oh, absolutely. I'm just saying what's in the law related to the Fiscal Responsibility Act.
What I'm concerned about is two things. Government has borrowed from the fund and either hasn't paid it back at all or hasn't been paying it back as it ought to have. One. Number two, Government has not allowed NIB by law to be innovative that NIB could have, and may yet still be able to extend itself in terms of investment opportunities to generate inflows of cash into the fund rather than just by raising, taxing the Bahamian people.
Well,
because
but I think there's, I think that you raised some interesting points, and I think that first off, anything that would be dealing with something as significant as an IB would not, you would understand the risk of investing in things with high volatility, which we do see, and so I'm not sure that would be something that long term, and there may be one or two investments that are made that can flourish, but reality is the nature of this and most security systems is to invest in very stable places and stable scenarios.
Right.
But when you look at the ultimate structure, where you have a system that continually, at this stage, regardless of what has happened with the principal, but continually is giving out more resources to the individuals than it's taking in, we're going to run into this fundamental problem at some point. And then that's one of the structural things that I think needs to be looked at, because that item has been noted historically a number of times without the kind of action that would require to at least manage something to level off. And I think that's where we ultimately want to be. People want to feel like I'm paying this every week, I'm paying this every month, doing whatever needs to happen. And then there should be an end goal, that it's being managed appropriately, but that there is an understanding that long term, the responsible management of it looks at a way that there becomes either a surplus or that immediate costs are covered.
You said a number of interesting things, and I'd like to focus on this one, Matt. Government, NIB, the last actuarial report I heard, or not actuarial report, but
the
report
ILO,
I heard it
I think
in
the
respect.
ILO report.
No, in respect to its reserves.
Okay.
Yeah, $1 billion or so left in the fund. If NIB had been allowed by law to have invested, say, 5, 6, 10 years ago, say $20 million in a diversified portfolio, some of which may have been high, some of which may have been low risk, but nonetheless a diversified portfolio. I dare say 1 or 2 or 3 of those investment instruments would have probably paid off handsomely for NIB today, wherein it would have been far much more solvent than it is today. But it seems to me that while the government has taken from the fund, and while the government is taxing the Bahamian people to put more money in the fund, the government has not given NIB the professional or technical room or latitude or ability to be able to become more innovative in terms of its revenue generation prospects. Is that a fair statement that you could agree to?
I would say, again, in retrospect, there's a lot of scenarios that could bring us to better solvency. The challenge becomes where we're addressing this now. So we're not even addressing this in quote unquote normal times. We're looking at it at the back end of 2 significant crises that are both unprecedented. So that's one of the challenges too, as these things continue to be pushed down the line. Is that you find yourself having to deal with it when it comes up, not at an ideal time or with circumstance where you really can do things a little bit more strategically, which is what you're talking about. Right. So the scenarios now are going to have to be put in basically real time. And I really do think that it's going to be important that people like yourselves and others who have different ideas about how do we work this out can be brought forward, and that there will be listening and response, so that there's full education as to whatever steps need to be taken. They are the ones that the majority of folks believe and agree to.
Matt, let me just say this, and I'll conclude on this note. We in the Bahamas often talk about that we do not have sales tax. We call it VAT, or not sales tax. Sorry, we don't have income tax. But when one's salary is being taxed by government to pay expenses, whether it's for an NIB or for the consolidated fund, to me, That's an income tax because your income is being taxed. I would therefore like to suggest to the government that it allows NIB's board to look at innovative ways. So many of them, I'm sure, out there that NIB can pursue. Because you and I would hate to see that fund crash. God forbid NIB wasn't around. This country would have been a lot worse off today.
Right. Well,
during COVID-19.
Right. It was a principal resource in terms of getting us through the
yes, through the pandemic. I mean, and when we became independent 49 years ago, a lot of people were upset and angry, man, about NIB coming because they didn't want to be taxed. But thank God for NIB. So I trust that NIB will be given the tools that it needs to become sovereign, because we can't afford now to lose an NIB. Because Michelle, is it a quasi-government or completely independent body?
Quasi.
Quasi. Okay. Well, we can't afford to lose it, no matter what context it is operating in right now. So I pray God something new and beneficial will happen. So thank you, Michelle, for your time.
All right. Thank you so much for calling, JT. During the break, Matt, you and I were talking about how the approach has been to sort of wait until our backs are against the wall before we actually try to figure out a way out of this. But the problem is that even if you come up with something like the Prime Minister has said, well, we're not going to raise the NIB rate right now, we're going to try to find creative ways to deal with this. But is that in essence putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage?
I do think so. I think that any solution that's got to come out of it at this stage has to be sustainable. Mm-hmm. Meaning we don't want to just get ourselves past 2028, right? You want to get yourself into a scenario where this engine runs and is relatively self-sufficient. And that's going to mean structural changes. Mm-hmm. It may mean policy changes in the way that it's developed, like looking at a retirement age. It may require different levels of contribution. It may require different levels of payout or ceilings to be increased. Something that is going to ultimately come up with a system that ensures that when we look at 10, 15, 20, and 25 years down the line, that there still is this understanding that this is what this is for. Mm-hmm. I think that's also a challenge with where we're at now, is it takes away some of the opportunities for us to do those big changes without big pain. So it's hard to talk about incremental changes if you keep moving them down the line and there's still this kind of penultimate, there will be a dead end. And if it was 2030 was what they talked about in 2018, and now we're at 2028. And so if we don't make those changes, then subsequently it's going to be 2027, and mm-hmm. all of those, it continually becomes more and more dire. So in our space, I think that's where we have to not only make sure we have all ideas on the table, but that we have a very realistic plan about what's going to happen, and that a plan that will be owned and bought into for the long term. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about the National Development Plan. Dr. Nicola Virgil-Roll, who she's one of my heroes, and is just one of those people who, when she took on a task, does it always fully, completely. So when she did the National Development Plan during the last PLP administration, it was a very nonpartisan consultation. Mm-hmm. She talked to everybody. She used the data that was available, and she put things in place in a way and it matched up, even the way the plan matched up, it matched up with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So if we were working on a goal locally, it would actually help us to achieve things we had signed on to internationally. And the crux of that plan, like the crux of the SDGs, was a matter of providing more equal access across a broader spectrum of our people, making sure that things like poverty and inequity are fundamentally corrected. And in that plan, it speaks to a reform of NIB. Mm-hmm. And then, interestingly, right after that, she became the head of NIB. And similarly to that plan, working on how do we make reforms, it was drawing from that playbook. So that becomes an opportunity to revisit, to go back and say what's still relevant within that can hold us forward. And if we can get the National Development Plan adopted and officially passed as the track that all governments subsequently will have to follow, mm-hmm. it becomes a way for the public to have a greater access to understanding what's going to happen and the strategies that are being employed. But it also allows civil society groups like mine or private sector groups like the Chamber of Commerce or the University of the Bahamas to also monitor and contribute where they can. So I do think that although we know that the immediate issue is how do we ensure that this fund stays forward, some of the issue is that we didn't do some of the foundational things that might have helped to steer us in the right direction back in the days. So those are opportunities that, in addition to fixing the direct structure of NIB, which would be the board and the minister and then anybody that has a voice within that, we also think there can be other paths that help to ensure that if changes are made now, they are kept and managed throughout.
All right. Well, the Prime Minister's office, through the Press Secretary Clint Watson, said that the Prime Minister has made it clear that he is not considering at this time to raise the NIB contribution rate, but they're looking at more creative ways of redirecting funds to that. And the opposition is calling for the government to reprioritize certain budget items to prevent a catastrophe. This is exactly what Clint Watson had to say regarding the opposition's suggestions. I need you to pull up clip number 3 because I keep getting knocked off the system.
The opposition has always been very big on talk, but very slow to action. It's the opposite of the Davis administration. The Davis administration is keen on taking action. When you hear that there is this talk from the administration about the NIB fund, and most of the talk that you've heard so far is the Prime Minister saying he's not going to put any tax on the burden of the people right now. It's not the right time. Doesn't mean that that's the end. It means that's not the avenue. The Prime Minister and his cabinet are working on new opportunities of streams of revenue and new opportunities to be able to ensure that the fund is rebuilt right now without having to tax evade people. Now, if he chooses to do that later on, that will be a discussion then. Right now, he has said that he has to be able to ensure that the payment people can manage. Now, that's what I think most people admire about his leadership and good governance. Prime Minister is able to do more than one thing at the same time. He's not going to just increase the fund and put taxes on the payment people, cause them to suffer to say, oh, look what we did to the fund. No, he's concerned that he's been asked to govern by the people because he governs with compassion and understanding for the people.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think I would probably 100% accept everything that Mr. Watson just said, in that this is a very tough time to suggest to people that there may be an additional financial burden you're going to have to shoulder because things haven't been managed going into the past. So that struggle, I think, is something that we have to look at. And we aren't advocating, I don't think anybody wants at this point that there has to be additional monies coming out. I think the plan of the process rather of developing that plan can be as open and as transparent as possible. What are the areas they're considering? What is the capacity for investment that's going to shore up the fund? And more importantly, what are the structural changes that even if they don't see the impact now, we can start working collectively on that so that we understand what it will be when it does. If the economy starts to improve and it becomes that there's a better scenario for people to have a little bit more money taken out of their accounts, or that private sector folks would have to put more towards that. How do we link that with an increase of economic opportunity? How do we link it with productivity? How do we link it with all of these things? It doesn't happen if we wait until it's done. It happens when people are starting to do that development and work collectively now. Right. So I think, respecting very much the Prime Minister's desire not to burden folks that are already significantly taxed. You fully understand that and support that, but it does mean that there's an opportunity now for us to open the door a bit so that there can be more wide and broad discussions and education about what this is and what it's going to affect us. As you said, there was the government's statement, the opposition statement. So the citizen then is left to kind of figure out what does that mean for them, and we need more opportunity for folks to understand what this does mean for them. Should they be anxious? What are the opportunities? How realistic are they? What are the strategies that are going to be employed? What is a scenario that might look at how we make sure not only that the fund is restored so that they can float us in a time where it is economically challenged, but what then puts this back in a space where you can say this will ultimately continue to result in a viable security net for folks when they're in dire circumstances.
Let's look at what the opposition does have to say in response to that statement from Clint. They actually are of the opinion that, well, in this particular clip we're going to play, this is with FNM Chairman Dr. Dwayne Sands, who is urging the government to take the necessary steps before it's too late, labeling comments by Mr. Watson as an example of an administration that simply doesn't get it. And Dr. Sands is saying that the PM will worsen public confidence as he continues to kick this issue down the road. And he's suggesting that the Davis administration repurpose their discretionary spending and prioritize NIB. Let's go to that clip.
The government has claimed through their press secretary that significant contributions were made to NIB. Well, you're not using your own personal money. You would be using the people's money. And certainly this was not discussed in the budget. We don't see where any huge sums of money were placed. I believe that the situation at NIB is grim and getting worse. As a matter of fact, I believe that it is going to increase the moral hazard of people having to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to continue to contribute to NIB or whether they should start salting away money under their mattress for their retirement years. It is irresponsible, it's reckless, and it is interfering with public confidence in a very important pillar of the Bahamian social safety net. We have increased consultancies by some $15 million. That they've increased travel, these junkets. I think Bahamians were offended to see members of this huge contingent on, these tourist-related activities by the dime of hard-working Bahamians. Did you go to Rwanda to work, or did you go to Rwanda to play? So perhaps what you can do is cut down on the extravagant travel and put some of that extra money towards NIB.
Okay, you could take it out, Jason. Take out the clip. Okay, so this goes right back to what you and I were talking about, Matt, where, this problem didn't just start since September 16th.
Right.
And for Dwayne Sands to get up and say, oh, you're being hypocritical and, you're just kicking the problem down the road. And not to say that he's not right in terms of being more prudent with spending, but that message didn't seem to hit the Free National Movement administration when it sat in power just before September 16th. I mean, some things are coming out now about reckless spending on their part. So,
But I think right. So that becomes the dilemma that we find ourselves in, a cycle that when, again, it's a heavily politicized environment.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of NIB, the level of borrowing that we've had to do. And again, some of it coming from things like Dorian or COVID that you had to, but other levels. When it goes back and things are not appropriately allocated, managed, addressed, then they compound and they continue to have impact. So a statement like Chairman Sands spoke to had a lot in it, right? It talked about travel but they literally just had a month of discussion related to the budget. They just had this in Parliament talking about some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
The strategies that are going to fix this are not short term.
Right.
They're not going to be, hey, let's not spend X in this year. And even if that does happen, if there's, the government tightens its belts and we have money left over and that money is allocated to ensure, that's not going to be the long-term solution.
Right.
So we need to allocate even though the immediate problems are quite significant, we need to allocate time and structure and process into how do we resolve these things sustainably, meaning that they don't keep cropping up. We see that with issues of corruption. We see that with issues of fiscal management, borrowing, things that come up, policies that are more are not as representative of the needs and the interests of the citizen. When you just keep moving it down the line, you have less opportunity to really fix it and solve it. And then the citizen, and I do think what Dr. Sand spoke to, the citizen will start to divorce themselves a bit from it.
Right.
They will find if it comes down to, I don't believe that the system of government will take care of me, I'm gonna find my own way around. And that's where we start to see things breaking down. That's where you see lack of compliance on paying bills and taxes. That's why you see people, we know that there's an estimation by the IDB that there's 30% of our economy might be informal businesses. That's small businesses that people have, little side gigs that they don't have a business license. They don't have, because they're, you know what, I'm not going to let money come out of my pocket because this I'm doing for me,
right.
is what the attitude, and you totally understand it. But when a problem like Dorian came along, all those side businesses, they couldn't get access to some of the monies that were made available by all the international partners, the SBDC or government, because they weren't formalized. We don't have access to the monies that would come from them if they're employing folks, which would pay into an NIB. Those are just fundamental things that we continue to let happen because people don't necessarily have their trust in the system. So we have to back up and start to fix some of these cracks and fissures that have been there for a while in order to start to build on a very solid foundation going forward. That requires openness. It requires discussion, and it requires, I think this is a perfect situation where it is going to affect us all in the same way, regardless of if you're in, your favorite political parties in power or not. How can we then all be joined in this to figure our way out that makes sense for all of us?
One of my viewers on Facebook is asking the question, could part of the VAT money be allocated to NIB? There's a problem because that is already allocated for.
So, right. And again, it's that put money from one section into another that's already been challenging in this experiences. So right now we know that there is I think the current government's doing a good job of whittling down and getting the debt off of the levels that it was even earlier this year. That means that we've got to keep that pressure. We've got to keep monies going forward. We've got to focus on the operations of government to make sure that it's as efficient, as effective as possible. But the monies that are allocated for Section A, if you move them over, that's going to leave an issue in that space.
Yeah.
And again, when we don't pay our debts the way we need to, or we don't whittle down, it means we have to pay more to borrow when we do have to borrow. We don't want to be in that circumstance because we know where that gets us.
Right.
So the fixing this can't just be addressed by moving things from one area to another for now. That may address our most immediate issues, but what happens long term? That's where we have to keep thinking is, how do we make sure this thing is in place for when I do need it, for when I might be hit by, God forbid, an injury on the job, when I might have. And that's the other thing. I think what you see NIB started out with and what it does now, there's many different things that the NIB does. There could be a call for it to be a little bit more razor focused for its original intent, but people would need to understand that because people have now gone to depend on the additional features that are provided within that.
All right. We are going to take a quick break. When we come on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the question of whether or not the payment structure that now exists is part of the problem. Should persons who are making a lot more be contributing more than a person who's making, just the minimum? We're going to talk about that and more on the other side of the break. Stay with us. This is GPS.
Your body's immune system is under constant pressure from things like stress, lack of exercise, and toxins in the environment. It's crucial to be proactive and support your immune system with the nutrients it needs to function effectively. But it's often hard to get these nutrients from food alone. Introducing fast-acting Zinc Plus Immune Support by Longevity. Unlike zinc-only supplements, Zinc Plus Immune Support builds on the proven power of zinc and adds complementary nutrients to give your immune system extra support. Vitamin D helps balance the effects of zinc, while our proprietary blend of natural fruit and root extracts provides the extra help your immune system needs to work against daily stressors. And we've included Youngevity's exclusive plant-derived minerals to give your body the minerals it needs, but can't get from food alone. And because Zinc Plus Immune Support is delivered in a great-tasting, sugar-free, berry-flavored lozenge, it encourages quicker absorption of all these nutrients into your body. Zinc Plus Immune Support. Zinc plus the extra support your body needs to promote a healthy immune system. To learn more, contact your Youngevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for rims, paints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
It's gotten harder and harder to get your daily requirement of vital nutrients from food alone. Without additional vitamin and nutrient support, your health and well-being can suffer drastically. That's why Z-Radical was specifically formulated. It combines a blend of antioxidant-rich vitamins, minerals, and botanicals with the protective powers of fucoidan to help fill the gaps from lack of nutrients in your foods. The core of Z-Radical is fucoidan, a naturally occurring polysaccharide that helps stimulate immune reaction, protecting you against inflammation and oxidative stress. We harvest this powerful mineral-rich nutrient from brown seaweed, harvested only from the world's most pristine ocean waters to ensure the purest quality. It's then extracted using cold process technology to ensure maximum levels of bioavailability. Then we add essential vitamins that help to protect your cardiovascular and nervous systems and are crucial for optimal immune and neurological function. Z-Radical also includes a proprietary blend of delicious antioxidant-rich fruits and berries. This great-tasting combination helps your body combat free radical imbalances that can contribute to a variety of degenerative conditions like arthritis and heart disease. Z-Radical. Experience the power of fucoidan with antioxidant-rich berries, 8 essential vitamins, and more to provide you with potent health benefits. To learn more, contact your Youngevity associate.
And we are back. Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on Global 99.5 FM. This is a Hot Topic Tuesday. And even though Matt Aubry is here in the studio, that don't mean y'all ain't supposed to call, you know. The telephone number is 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0272. And our new WhatsApp line is 801-0271. We have a caller, right? Caller, welcome to GPS.
Hello?
Hi, you're on the air.
Yes. This NIV problem. We have some cruise ships that release send our own keys in the Bahamas, right? Hello?
We're listening. Go ahead. Keep talking.
All right. Now, and them keys, I don't know if it's all of them, but some of them, the crews come off the ship, and I'm working as bartenders, waiters, stuff like that on them keys. I experienced it myself.
Caller, I don't know what's going on with your phone or whatever
Hello.
you're calling.
Could you hear me now?
It's kind of distorted, but go ahead. Keep talking.
Yes. Because like, and even in Germany, where Virgin comes in, they have their own crew working none of them on the shore. There's no waiters and waitresses from resorts working. They come in. Now, I want to know if these people that are working in the country on these kids and do they have work permit? And if the humans were working there, that would have been more contribution to NIB, because I witnessed an ocean key in the morning when the ship comes. Over 200 workers comes off the ship to work in the morning, and around 2 o'clock, the shift change, and that same month gets off, and then fresh month goes on shore to work. And they're working as waiters and bartenders, bus boys, and stuff like that. Where the humans could go. Some of them working as bathroom attendant also. So the humans were doing them jobs that made more contribution to NIB. I was listening to the
Okay, thank you for calling. We're having a really hard time understanding what he was saying. I think what he was asking is about the cruise ships and the international workers on those cruise ships, and once they come into port, do they have work permits? And are or should they be making contributions to NIB? I don't think it works quite that way. I don't believe that they are considered a part of our work pool, which is why they're not, as far as I'm aware, required to pay NIB.
People who work on the ship.
Yeah,
No,
I think that's what he was
but I think
saying.
in the island, on the private islands, they do. I think they do.
If they work on the island itself, yes.
Yeah, but I don't know about if they come off the ship. No,
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
couldn't quite understand what he was saying because of all of the distortion.
Right.
So I don't know if we answered your question or not, sir. Okay, the telephone numbers again, 3260271, 3260271, 3260272, 3260272, and our WhatsApp line 8010271. 8010271 is the new WhatsApp line to send us a message. While we're waiting for our producer to clear that caller, because I'm not sure if that's a caller for the show or not, is a part of our payment is our payment structure, is that a caller or not? Let's go to the call first. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
One question I would like to ask, and if you just answer it quickly, I'll just move on. How many schemes of payments does NIB have?
When you say schemes of payment, what do you mean?
Yeah, contributors and non-contributors.
That I don't know.
Are they two different schemes?
I am not sure.
For example, if you were working as a private contractor all your life,
Mm-hmm.
and you contributed your regular, but not from your business, just as a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
When you hit the age of 65, is it not that you go down there and just accept that it's a dirty word now, it's called pension, but back in the day before NIB was initiated, there was a pension paid to you just because you hit the age of 65 and you have been contributing to the Bahamian society all your life. Is that scheme still in effect?
It is. I mean, that's the fundamental structure of it. You would have had to pay into the scheme, and I know now, in theory, it's pretty easy to check that. You can go onto the registrant self-service portal that they have, the online service portal. You can look at your contribution statements and see where you are on that statement. But fundamentally, that is the core element. But the difference between folks who haven't been contributing and have, I think you need to have contributed in order to receive benefits. And I know those that are contractors, I know when it came to payouts with the unemployment related to COVID, there were some discrepancies of folks who could access it based on that challenge. So they may need to relook at some of that too.
Well, let me tell you this. I have spent many years in the United States. And back when I was, 19, 20, I contributed until I left to go when I was about 30 years old. And I went to check to see if that 10 years or whatever I contribute was there. They couldn't find anything. But I had a friend who left here at the same age when NIB started in the 70s. And God be my judge, like Michelle Malcolm will say, from my mouth to God's ears. This man came back about 5 years ago. Been out of the Bahamas all this time, and he got retroactive since he was 65. I don't know, he was past 65, and that was done for him. And a lot of us who lives here in the Bahamas, been here in the Bahamas, participating in our economy through licensing your cars and buying groceries and all that kind of stuff. We got on there and we see that you are non-contributor, so you get nothing. No, I'm just taking it that you are some expert at NIB. Maybe I'm asking the wrong person this.
Yeah, because he is representing the Organization for Responsible
Oh,
Governance.
okay. I'm sorry that. I'm
He's
sorry
not
that. I
a-
just thought I'd take this opportunity. This is a great opportunity to put this out there because I know a lot of Bahamian men like my age hitting almost 70. We're in the dark right now, especially when these things are coming up.
Right.
And we're just ready to accept our whatever you call it they give you. I think it's old age assistance type of pension.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if it will be affected. I know.
Well, I know there's a lot more information that's up now on the NIB website, so it's definitely a great place to check out. And there's also, as I said, a way you can check your specific contribution to understand what that will relate to you. But in the course of reforming it, though, and I think that taking your point there, I think all of these scenarios need to be fleshed out, and people need to understand: is this what does this look like? How will this benefit and affect us going forward? Who needs this kind of service and support, and will we be able to maintain that? It sounds like at our current levels, not any of it will be able to be maintained. So how do we need to change in order to make sure that there will be stuff for folks when they have the need?
Absolutely. But I just said it before I leave, and I just say this quickly, but you asked me to refer to the websites. And I promise you this, sir. What you hear spoken from the great Prime Minister for the last 5 years in regards to what we went through, the pandemic and even Dory and all that kind of stuff, all the aids and the help that was supposed to help the country, referring to the website, if they even get back to you, which they never have, and there were a lot of people who suffered the consequences of the 40% reduction in rent and all that kind of craziness he was talking about, that never materialized. Like myself, was evicted, put on the street in the middle of a pandemic right now. So the web, I want to put this out there for the Bahamas. I don't care who hear me. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Sure.
We were not allowed to work. We couldn't even go out to jog, for God's sake. So a lot of Bahamians, but we're proud people. We wouldn't come up and stand up and say something's been done wrong to us as a people, whereas you now this is all Social Security talk. Whereas you pass a food store with lines around the building, and you feel sorry for the people on the line. But guess what? You feel sorry for yourself because you can't even afford to go on the line because those people there, their checks never stopped straight through these pandemics.
And what we saw is so many folks. First off, I'm sorry that happened to you. It sounds like that was a very difficult time.
It was horrible.
I'm glad you're at least out of that scenario. Yep. But circumstantially, we found out how many people are in that space during the pandemic. I mean, we talked, so many folks who either were in need of food distribution, or they were, as you said, displaced, or they couldn't provide their livelihood, or they were put on the streets, all of that. And that's exactly highlights why this needs to be fixed in a way that goes forward, because you don't know when the next, God forbid, hurricane hits. You don't know when another wave of pandemic or something that affects the global economy hits, because it's going to hit those folks just like yourself at the level where they're just keeping afloat the hardest, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for calling. All right, so let's get to this question we've been teasing all along, and that is whether or not the existing payment structure is a part of the problem. What do I mean? We have some extremely wealthy Bahamians in this country, and we have some very poor people in this country. But the rate that they're paying is pretty much not, it's the same. It may not be as much coming from the poor person, but it's still the same, rate. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, there's a
difference.
There's
in
a
terms
ceiling.
It's a
right?
ceiling.
And so the higher you go, there is a cap, and there's a maximum. So,
but the ceiling is a joke compared to what some of these people are earning.
And this is also, though, and I think to the credit, I guess, of the Prime Minister and the financial folks in looking at it, this is a really fragile time in terms of the economy.
Right.
We saw during COVID that, as we saw through the expenditures of NIB and other ways, government shored up the economy. Well, government put money into a place and tried to keep the things going. And then the handover for sustainability has got to be that the private sector drives the economy. And so what we see now is the move going back up the scale as our economy starts to counter, and we again are hearing numbers, numbers to be like pre-pandemic, not until 2024. So we're still not out of the woods,
Right.
At a time as well when increased costs are coming up from the war and the inflation. All of those things are affecting us at a really scary time for this to have to be a discussion, because what we know is that by those who do have monies who are starting to get back into a space, that money ultimately can be reinvested. It can be, we don't want to overburden businesses that had to float and keep business, people on salary, even when they weren't making the money to be able to do so. So at this time, and this again calls to like why dealing with it now, pushing it down the line, puts us in a very challenging circumstance, because that conversation, that dilemma should have been addressed very earlier on, right?
Yeah.
How do we adjust the caps as we go forward? The percentages that we are held to pay for NIB relatively are small in compared to other spaces that have adapted to move into space, recognizing again the increased cost as it is to be older now and have increased costs, like care and life continues to go on. Here in the Bahamas, we know we have a lot of issues like obesity and diabetes and heart disease, and so all of the needs and care needs, cost of living continue to go high. So the money we're getting is not necessarily going as far as it should, but we definitely see that the contribution levels are less than they probably need to be.
Right.
So now that we look at how can we self-correct, it has to be done in a plan that makes sense and doesn't sabotage some other area. It doesn't overburden those that have the least amount, but it also doesn't significantly overburden those. Because at the same time, if I'm correct in this, the government has talked about and is exploring looking at what are other levels of taxation. So if we're going to implement an income tax that's based on, those who have more pay more, because that's been a philosophy that's been expounded, then how many times are you going to hit that well? So are you getting them for the tax? Or are you getting them for the NIB contribution?
Right.
And what we don't want to do is facilitate a space where that segment of our population, not those that have the most, but those folks that are in that
in the middle,
get bound up in a way that it disincentivizes them to continue to grow, invest, and do what needs to do what needs to be done. We see just this as a plug for our sector, but we're a not-for-profit. We're Bahamian not-for-profit, and there's a lot of us out there. Those folks have been doing tremendous amounts of work at this time to make sure that people are, whether it be folks who have been victims of domestic violence, or our children that have been struggling with education, or those that are require food, they need support as well. And the support that they get also comes from that source. So how many times are we going to go to that same source? If we want that investment to make sure it's going to meet our needs of our vulnerable citizens, we have to be strategic in how we identify that, which may mean, as we've heard talk about, incremental changes that go along a particular schedule, and that schedule is driven, and depending on how the actuarial numbers work out, it might be that it's more severe initially and then it reduces down to a more stable level of increase, or there may be a policy or investment strategy that's able to reduce that. All of it could be potentially a solution, much more likely that it happens in different areas, but we need to understand what that plan is so people understand it, because otherwise, just as the gentleman, our last caller, you start to then think, well, I'm paying my fare, how come they aren't paying their fair share? And that means that the system has not done what it needs to do. It has not made people aware of why it's organized the way it is and what the ultimate benefit is, maybe not to you directly, but to society in the long term.
Because truth be told, there will never be the right time to do this. There will always be something that makes it difficult to get it done.
Right. And this is the challenge, is you keep pushing it further down. We don't know what comes down the line, right? If the world goes into a recession, we're back in another challenge. And so how can we how can we develop a system that Bahamians believe in and they believe that those that are put in a position to govern them will follow through and consistently will do that and have a trust that the monies that are put in there are managed effectively, openly, and for the ultimate benefit.
Mm-hmm. Telephone numbers to call. I'm talking to Matt Aubry from the Organization of Responsible Governance. The telephone numbers to call are 326-0271, 326-0271, 326-0272, 326-0272, and the new WhatsApp number, not to call, because somebody's been trying to call on the WhatsApp line. I can't answer your call. WhatsApp us a message at 801-0271. 801-0271 is the WhatsApp number for messages only, not for calls. We can't get your call on the air if you call on WhatsApp, so I'm not going to answer it. So don't even waste your time calling the WhatsApp number because it won't be answered. All right, so today on this hot topic, we're talking NIB crisis. We've been getting these warnings now for decades. And we're at the point now where we can no longer stick our head in the sand, as we love to do in this country, and pretend the problem is just going to go away by itself. And now that we are approaching or already at a critical stage, the question is, what can be done to truly fix this? And no, we don't want to hear any political talk about the PLP courses or the F&M courses, because all y'all guilty in terms of not taking this seriously and doing what could be done or should be done to try to fix this problem. Okay, so this is obviously something that is going to impact us all. And the point I believe that Mr. Aubry has been trying to make is that we should have some input, all of us, into how to fix this problem going forward, because it's going to impact all of us one way or the other. And so the question has to be raised, Matt, about responsible governance, no pun intended. But what has happened to all of the money that was collected over the years? And I get it. Like you said, if more people being paid out than paying in, then you know you're going to have a problem. But some of this can be attributed to poor management. Would you agree?
Well, I think so. I heard a show earlier. I think it was last week, or maybe even earlier No, it would have been last week, rather. And Pandora Butler, who was one of the folks high up at NIB for a long time, kind of gave an account for how it had paced out.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a really good chronology that really explained and understood, like, okay, this step was taken, here's when we knew there was a problem, nobody did anything about it, here's was another step. And at each juncture, I'm sure there were things in the current political scenario that said, this is how we have to go.
Right.
She didn't present too many nefarious scenarios, which
Mm-hmm.
I think all of us kind of go to and look at that.
Mm-hmm.
But clearly, NIB has been used by government to invest in different parts of government, some of which didn't pay out, very
Mm-hmm.
much so,
Mm-hmm.
and other parts that actually did what they kind of were expected to. But without a culture of openness in our budget and our finance management, you always are going to have these questions. Where did it go? Why? How could, we have that question with that, right? Every year the budget is put forward. You can see where the monies are allocated. You can see what the plans are in terms of that. You can see how much was brought in. You see how much was put out. It's all there, but it's not broken out in a way that's easy to see or it's meaningful. But the question still remains, this money was supposed to go towards X. Let's show how clearly it is.
Right.
Well, we need to change that culture. We need to change the culture. The citizens need to change the culture to say that they want more information. They want better understanding. There's a plan and a project that the IDB has funded that's been going on since the last PLP. It started in the last PLP administration, has run through that the F&M administration, is still continuing now.
Mm-hmm.
That's called public finance management. And they're working and reforming. They're moving towards better systems. They're looking at how they become more transparent. But it's not something that a lot of people know or talk about. It's the kind of thing that will helpfully change the culture. So we need to know if there are going to be changes or models going forward, that there is a system in place, because it will build confidence.
We have two callers on the line, so let's go to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Hello, Ms. Malcolm.
Hi.
I reached in the late. You're talking about NIB funds, right?
Yes.
Okay, Bill, Ms. Malcolm, some of this is easier to fix, Go after those big business what owe national insurance but don't pay. We always say we can put them in court, we can do this. But when the time comes and we find out who owe government, NIB, We just leave it alone. And another thing that I noticed that is taking place in this country, you have a whole lot of people that is hiring these people. They make a bargain with them. They are not paying these people national insurance and all of that. They working under the table and not paying national insurance. When time for them to get something from national insurance, it's nothing there. So government got to go after these business who are hiring these people and is not paying national insurance. Okay? So these little problems is easy to fix. Then another thing, you have a lot of the elder people, what is over 60, is still working, so they don't contribute no more. We need more younger people to be hired, and that's the way the funds will be coming in to be paying national insurance. So if you have a whole lot of people that is don't pay national insurance, but they are collecting from national insurance, then everything is coming out, nothing is going back in. We have about maybe 5,000 people came out from school last term, and this term again. If they is not working, and you have people just collecting from national insurance, then you know we expect for these things, but national insurance need to go after these big business people that is not paying the contribution for their workers. You get construction workers. Okay. Yesterday I go work for.
No, call. I can't let you go on much longer because we have another caller waiting on the line. So let's let Mr. Aubry respond so we can take the next call.
Okay.
Well, I think you make a key point. I mean, enforcement and compliance is going to be critical, right? Those that are supposed to pay have to pay, and that's essential. The other point you raised, though, and think about where we're coming out of. Before even Dorian or COVID, we had youth unemployment in the area of about 23 to 24%, which was the third highest in the Caribbean. Haiti, Jamaica, and then us. So thinking about the fact that there is a huge portion of a potential workforce that is not being employed. Come outside of COVID, and the IDB just estimated that probably about 40% of people were out of work for that 2021 period of time. Those folks are absolutely not contributing, yet the need continues to increase and more is coming out of it. So when we have a system, just like you point out, where more is going out than is going in, it's fundamentally not going to work. Even if we get the full level of compliance, there still is a structural challenge there. So we need to be able to do all of what you say, but also ensure that there's a system in place that makes sure that we're going to gain what we gain from a system that may be skewed the way that it historically has been.
All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, welcome to GPS.
Hello, Ms. Malcolm.
Hi.
Hey, Lady Malcolm and your guest. Ms. Malcolm, well, you and your guest and everybody is saying exactly what I wanted to say. So let me commend your guest. I don't know where you find the gentleman from, but his truth, honesty, integrity, and stuff shines. Every time I hear him, it shines. And we need more people like them to help us steer this country out of this mess we're in. Because there are some austerity measures that we can do to NIB where we ain't need to raise nothing. Because it's only about 40% of out there people or businesses are contributing to NIB when we should have almost 100% contribution out there from everybody. But it's a breath of fresh air to listen to the show today, Ms. Markham. And thanks for taking my call.
Thank you so much for calling. You know, Matt, if you live in the United States of America, you're an American citizen, and you decide to not pay your taxes, they have this entity called the IRS. They will go to the ends of the earth to track you down and make you pay. And if you decide to act stupid, they will freeze your assets. They will even put you in jail. They don't play with that. Here, it's like a running joke.
Well, I think across the board, if we honestly look at the last number of years, and I think it's a very self-serving response, but you can see that subsequent governments have this focus on gaining back revenue, whether it be real property tax, whether it be folks that are out of compliance, and they do a lot, and they've invested in these now units to make sure to go out. And so there is clearly a focus on money that's sitting out there. I don't think anything is as sacrosanct as it used to be.
Right.
Not too far ago, but I think there is now an attention on making sure that if you owe, you got to owe. And again, that's not an easy process. There's different types of ways to do that. I know in Hopetown, before Dorian, the Abaco local government had a pilot going on with the Department of Inland Revenue, looking at how they could reclaim real property tax. And the government estimated that there was probably about 600,000 that they thought could have been secured that was outstanding. The others they just wrote off, but they hadn't been able to do so. The local government entity said, hey, give us a shot. We'll go out of it. And instead of 600,000, the local government entity actually reclaimed $1 million.
Wow.
And so embracing a way that we can be working more collectively with our citizens, with our government, with our private sector.
Decentralized control.
It's going to help us. So this is another opportunity that opens the door. We need to have better understanding. Just as the gentleman said, we need solid numbers. We need to understand what are the challenges that historically have happened, not for the case of laying blame, but what monies are still out there. What can we be doing to depend upon a solid scenario that comes forward? We at Org have talked a lot, and Citizen, thank you so much for your comments towards me, but I would give them right back to you. What we talk about at Org as the solution is that we say folks need to get informed and then get involved. And clearly you're on that process. You're aware of it, and people that have been calling into the show, you're aware of these issues. You've been paying attention. Now we need to give you opportunities to get involved. We also have advocated on public consultation models that are more standard. What you'll see is different pieces of policy will come up, and sometimes there's a request out or a town hall, but it's not always very clear. Well, in this instance, the Commonwealth puts forward a recommendation on public consultation that would put forward, say, a green paper that outlines what the government would really want to do, and it would be informed by their levels of experts. But that would go out for public consultation so that we could build and develop a white paper that then subsequently says, this is what people would consider, and we could do these things in ways that could use technology, town halls, all of that. And that gives us a way that when you do make a decision on what pathway needs to happen, people don't feel like something was done behind their back, or that somebody's getting away, or that there's information that they're not available. What we need to do is really push for this culture where there's more openness, more information, and it benefits not just the citizenry, but it benefits government. Governments are more effective when this kind of a culture goes forward. So whether it be NIB or looking at laws around corruption or ombudsman or any of these new initiatives that have been talked about, we want to make sure that citizens have a voice and that can do so. We actually have an online bunch of tools that are free at orgbahamas.com that allow us to Are we still there? I'm sorry. That allow us to allow citizens rather to actually get information for yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you go to I'm sorry, not orgtransparency.com, you will be able to see a policy review center that gives you information on upcoming legislation. You'll be able to see something that's called Access Parliament that tells you who's going to speak in Parliament when and where, and a citizens charter, which also allows you to create a space where you can put your voice about what you think. And so NIB is one of the areas we're looking at, and this is a space where you can actually put your information forward so that government can hear and respond to what your interest is.
All right, we're going to take one more break, and then it's going to get a little controversial, y'all. I can leave that one right there. We'll talk about it on the other side of the break. Stay with us.
Understanding your microbiome, also known as your gut ecosystem, can change everything you thought you knew about nutrition, digestion, immunity, and metabolism. Keeping your gut ecosystem healthy and balanced is essential. Ultimate Microbiome by Longevity was specifically formulated to optimize this ecosystem. It provides the advanced support your gut needs through prebiotic, probiotic, and postbiotic supplementation. Our unique blend of probiotics includes Lactobacillus and Plantarum, healthy bacteria that can help prevent harmful bacteria from taking over your gut. Increasing your gut's population of beneficial bacteria creates a more balanced gut microbiome, which has been shown to aid in weight loss, skin health, sleep, mood, and may even help with seasonal allergies. Ultimate Microbiome also promotes the production of postbiotics. Postbiotics are key to help regulate your gastrointestinal health. To enhance digestion, Digizyme Multi-Enzyme Complex, a blend of 5 specific enzymes, has been added to Ultimate Microbiome. It can help break down food so your body can better absorb nutrients. Plus, we've added our proprietary I-26 hyperimmune egg powder to aid in the elimination of disease-causing gut bacteria and help your body balance its immune response. Ultimate Microbiome, the scientific, proprietary, and holistic approach to gut health that helps optimize your body's entire gut ecosystem. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
Welcome to Sunshine Auto, the hardest place on the planet for rims, tints, and tires.
We are your auto superstore for rims, Lexani, Azaras, Trueform, Western, Lux, Fuel, Trackline, Tough, Rough Racing, Velocity, Mud, All-Terrain, and low-profile tires. Cars, homes, and commercial window tinting. At Sunshine Auto, we put God first and customer is king.
Glasses love.
To stay healthy, it's crucial to make sure you get the nutrition you need every day. But it's difficult to get all your recommended vitamins and minerals from food alone. Even in the United States, 94% of people are deficient in at least one nutrient. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 by Longevity is a simple, convenient, and affordable way to help your body get the essential nutrients it needs. It's an advanced plant-driven multivitamin mineral complex that contains certified organic whole foods, trace minerals, and antioxidants. BTT 2.0 supports your body's natural defense system with a proprietary blend of energy-boosting and body-loving nutrients, plus prebiotics, probiotics, amino acids, and enzymes that support digestion. With an unusually high ORAC score of 8,000, you get even more antioxidants to help combat free radicals that can cause damage to your cells. But to get the most benefit and value from any multivitamin, your body must be able to break down the nutrients so you can fully absorb them. Otherwise, they'll just pass through your system without doing any good. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 was specially formulated with synergizing cofactors to ensure you get maximum nutrient absorption. Beyond Tangy Tangerine 2.0 is the easiest way to give your body the balance and complete daily vitamin mineral supplement it needs for optimal support of your overall health. To learn more, contact your longevity associate.
This portion of GPS is brought to you by Tiki Bikini Hut at Junkanoo Beach. Great food, cool tropical drinks, and family fun in the sun.
Welcome back to GPS, Global Paradigm Shift on this Hot Topics Tuesday here on Global 99.5 FM. My guest today is Matt Aubry from the Organization for Responsible Governance. And of course, you, our audience, are our co-hosts today because today is a Hot Topics Tuesday. And the hot topic we're discussing today is this NIB crisis we've been hearing so much about. Now, you know, Hot Topic Tuesday would not be Hot Topic Tuesday without some degree of controversy. And this is coming by way of one Lincoln Bain and Maria Daxon, who recently put out a video. Now, obviously, I couldn't play the whole thing. So what I did is I just went and pulled out a couple pieces of this live that they did. And the point they were trying to make is that a lot of money has been squandered over the years at NIB. And in this particular clip, they are alleging that millions of dollars were spent. The government, you know what? Let me let the clip speak for itself. Here's that clip.
Let me show you all some documents to show you all what's been going on with our money. Y'all might want to get closer, y'all can see this. You see this right here? This is an official document that purports to be, this is a conveyance. And it says, it's sold from the treasurer to National Insurance Board. So what that means, Maria, is that they sold property from the government to National Insurance.
Taxpayers again.
Now, why the hell would you sell property from the government that the government already owned and sell it to National Insurance? So, who owned or was in control of that property before? That's another question. All right? So, here you have it. This is a conveyance, and it has all the volume number where you can find all the information and everything.
Recorded
Everything
payments.
is right there. All right?
Civil
so
registry.
When we go into this, you're going to see that, see here, they paid the stamp tax. You see how much the stamp tax was? $300,000. That's the stamp tax. And the amount they paid was $3 million on the bottom.
National insurance money.
$3 million.
National insurance money.
All right? $3 million for a couple properties. All right? $3 million for a couple properties. $3 million of our money. And so, not only was it $3 million of our money, see, they list the properties that's involved. They say 1.85 acres or thereabouts property here and after call lot number 2, Golf Course Side subdivision. In the first schedule, 1.25 acres of hereabouts of property and after call, lot number 11, Golf Course Heights. Subdivision described in the second schedule here too, 1.74 acres or thereabouts of property here and after call, lot number 1, Golf Course, described in the third schedule, and 1.5 acres hereabouts of property here and after call, lot number 1, the Grove subdivision, described in the fourth schedule.
Who owned these properties? Who had owned these properties before National Insurance paid for these properties?
Now, when you go to the next page, they talk about the resolution, and we can walk you through these properties. But they say, by provision of Section 538 of the said Ministry of Finance, hereinafter called the Act, the vendor may sell or make any other disposition of the fee simple of which the land. So in other words, they can sell it by the House of Parliament. All right? And they made a resolution. See the resolution there, Maria? This is the resolution in the House. By resolution of the House of Assembly dated the 15th day of May, 2013.
Who was in power? Who was in power? Perry Christie.
That's Perry them.
Oh, the PLP was in power. The PLP.
And of the Senate dated the 28th day of August.
Who was in charge of the Senate?
2013.
Frankie Wilson, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Section 38 of the Act, both houses of Parliament approved the conveyance of lot number 2 of Golf Course Estate subdivision to the purchaser and consideration of the sum of $10 in currency.
What they trying to say? $10 for what, Lincoln?
So they approved them to buy these properties that I'm going to show you for $10, but they spent $3 million.
What?
Okay, so the National Insurance Board has since issued a statement, and I will read it in its entirety. It says the National Insurance Board, NIB, has taken note of public statements made on July 6, 2022 in relation to the operations of the NIB and certain properties owned by NIB. With respect to NIB operations, the public is advised that no decision has been made at this time to increase the retirement age from 65 to 67. The statement made is false. NIB further advises that while the reserves of the NIB have grown over the life of the fund and now stand at $1.5 billion, the reserves are currently in a state of decline, but principally because the amount of benefits paid annually have exceeded the amount of annual contribution income received from 2016. Given the current structure of the Social Security program, the contribution rate, and the number of pensioners receiving benefits, this trend will continue, and the differential between benefits and contributions will increase. For the fiscal year ended December 2021, the benefits payments to the public exceeded the contribution income by $70 million. NIB also advises that the suggestion that NIB provided a, quote, bailout, end quote, for the Bank of the Bahamas is totally unfounded. With regard to the properties owned by NIB, the public is advised as follows. During the period 2007 to 2014, NIB acquired several properties at a purchase price of $6.6 million for development and ultimate use of various government departments. The resolution referred to in a social media video related to just 2 lots purchased by the NIB. A total of $6.6 million was paid for the other 3 lots as a result of recent trespassers accessing the properties and causing damage thereto. NIB found it necessary to place security guards at its properties. The NIB further advises that a matter is presently before the courts in relation to a trespassing, I think they meant to say trespasser, on its property. Or maybe trespassing. The NIB refutes any claim
that the properties have been used by or for the benefit of officials or employees of NIB. It is also absolute fantasy to say that NIB obtained the properties from politicians or paid monies to politicians for the property. The NIB requests that members of the public verify the accuracy of information before making and repeating false and unfounded statements. Such statements, even though untrue, erode public confidence in the work and management of the fund, and tens of thousands of Bahamians rely on for their safety net. So I have a question for you, Matt, and you may or may not be able to answer this, but is it normal practice for NIB to be responsible for purchasing properties for use for government agencies or departments?
Well, and it opens the door to talk about the relationship between these quasi-governmental or state-owned enterprises and government and the management of them, and where and how they should be maintained in a distinct form. But clearly there's been an affiliation and a use of NIB historically to support and manage different government initiatives. And so within this instance, I don't know if it's normal, but it happens. It happens. And it happened over a period of 2007 to 2014. So that's going to cover a couple of
administrations,
right? So within that time period, it clearly is a space that government must have felt comfortable enough to be able to bring it forward in public to the houses and post it. Everything that's tabled is put forward. But it speaks, and I'm going to back off a little bit on this, it speaks again to the critical importance of us getting citizens involved. Right? Of the get informed and get involved. We need citizens' attention on it. Org is not a watchdog group. We focus on how do we build sustainable solutions and bringing all of our stakeholders together. But one of the biggest points towards achieving good governance is having more active and involved citizens. We know a lot of our citizens right now are in crisis. So, they're dealing with whether they can have a job tomorrow or whether they can feed their families in the next week. They may not be as concerned of these issues. But we need to have more folks thinking that if we do have a better government, a government that's more effective and efficient, one where we understand why government matters have been operated in the way they are, and have confidence that they are ultimately towards the benefit of the citizen, everyone will achieve more. We will have a government that's more effective and more efficient. We will have stronger trust. We'll have greater compliance. We'll have people that are not trying to go around the system because they feel like the system doesn't serve them. But we need that culture of openness, and it happens in different countries when things sometimes become so bad that it transcends politics. Well, again, to me, this NIB scenario sounds like something that can clearly transcend politics.
Yes.
If this doesn't work for all of us, we're going to all suffer. So in this instance, this can be an opportunity for us to change that model, for government to be more inclusive in the way they reach out and engage citizens, for us to fully make sure that there's an enacted Freedom of Information Act so that folks that are interested can get the information, so that we put forward an ombudsman, and this has been talked about in the last administration and in this government's blueprint for change, so that there's someone in place to act as a public advocate when we feel like there may have been instances of maladministration, that we use the mechanisms, the checks and balances that have been put into our system in a way that we can ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to, that government is running the way it should, and that decisions aren't being made in ways that people might assume may be contrary to the public interest. Or if there is a decision that you have questions about, you have the ability to get that information and understand, well, this was what the rationale of that decision was and why they came to this at this time.
Because, perception is a very serious thing.
Absolutely.
And if there's a perception that there's a problem with corruption in government, right? And you hear this kind of thing, and if it's legit, you still have people who will question what is really happening here because of what you just described, a lack of freedom of information, not having an involvement of the citizenry to the point where it seems like you all have this little club of your own and you making these decisions on our behalf, supposedly without our input. And so when something like this comes out, then the first thing perception says is, oh, red flag, because these are the same fellas who are often caught with their hand in the cookie jar, and you shouldn't trust anything that they said or did. And it erodes confidence in the whole system.
And that lack of confidence affects us economically. We have folks, government in the last administration moved forward with a public procurement bill and e-procurement. Well, e-procurement across the world is identified as a way to reduce the incidence of corruption, right? You take people out of the mix. Open bidding, you provide the results of a bid so people can clearly understand, okay, this is how it was decided, this is who, and it's a way that's been shown, if it's done right, that it opens up opportunities for more businesses to get a part of government procurement, and more importantly, that the decisions on who gets contracts is based on their merit, not their affiliation. But so many small business folks that we talked to for years felt that the system was rigged. They don't even believe that they should try, because why would this be any different? We have to get beyond that hurdle. When government makes an investment or puts forward a law that can really benefit us, and people don't take advantage of it because they don't believe the system works for them, and that illegitimate means are the only way to get around a system, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. So building back the confidence, reducing perception, there are laws and systems we can put in place that will make that happen. But if we don't have a culture where we understand that citizens should be involved, should be aware, well, ultimately, government will run under its own steam, making decisions that are not clear to the citizenry, and we just find ourselves in the same circumstance. So we need to do it differently. Building back trust, to me, is going to be one of the biggest and most important processes, and it requires openness. It requires transparency. It requires consistency, not consistency within one administration or even one 5-year period, but consistency over 5, 10, 15 years, regardless of who's in power.
Right.
That's what people will start to respond to. And when they do start to see that, they'll be able to bank on it. And that's where we need to get to.
Well, you know the saying, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result,
Right.
you just may be insane.
Right.
And we have to question our sanity sometimes in this country.
But we had the honor of going to the Summit of the Americas a couple weeks back. And when we met with lots of folks across the Caribbean, Latin America, and they're struggling with some of the same situations, right?
This is not unique to us.
We are 49 years old,
Right.
and that's not that old.
It's young.
We think it's pretty. We think it's a long time, but it's pretty young.
Yeah.
And we're tackling some of the very global issues that are here. We're in the circumstances where big countries tell us what to do and put their pressure on us, and we have to respond. And so instead of putting attention to things that may be more driven domestically, government is going to try and do what it needs to make sure we don't put in blacklists, or we don't get admonished by our funders or borrowers. So it then becomes up to the citizen to make sure that these lines follow through. And I can't see anything that's more directly applicable right now than NIB. It affects all of us, right? You're going to pay into it, or you may benefit from it, and people may benefit from it. And those folks that are absolutely in need of it are the ones that I think we've all pledged to take care of. So we got to make sure that the structure works. We all should have a stake in it. Government would be well served to open up doors and sit down and talk with folks and have broad consultation so that a plan can be developed, whether it be readopting the National Development Plan. I know that the Prime Minister is going to speak at UB tonight talking about the National Development Plan. So maybe this is an opportunity to re-engage something that we can all say, hey, wow, that's the plan. That's where we're going to follow it. Or it becomes a space where we can open the door for more folks to have their say.
All right. What can Citizen Q, what can Joe Blow, Joe Public, whatever you want to call them, do to try to bring about the change we all want to see?
Well, we want people to understand these issues, and there is a lot of information that is on the NIB website. Understanding what kinds of contributions you're due, who pays into it, what the plans are. That's what government is. That's government's statement, or an NIB's statement rather, to say this is what we're bound to. There's a law that drives most of that. Getting and calling for open consultation, speaking to your member of parliament, those persons that you would have elected. You need to go in and sit with them in their town, in their constituency office, or make a time to sit with them and listen and learn a little bit about what they think. Hear and let them know what you think. Make sure that there's an exchange. We need to make sure that government operates with the input of citizens, and that happens through very specifically sitting down and conveying your thoughts to those people that you've put in position to elect you. What we know is that the government right now has a majority of folks who are bound by cabinet. So of the 38 MPs, more of them than not are in cabinet, and they're bound by cabinet.
Right.
So the discussions that are going to happen related to what needs to happen, they're going to happen most realistically in that cabinet discussion. So you want to have the discussion with that person you voted for or elected, or who has voted to represent you, so that they understand your interests, your concerns, and tell them, we want a chance to sit down and talk about this. We want to learn about this. We want to know what are the government plans, so that we can decide, does that make sense to us? Or is that something that needs to be changed? Because we're the ones ultimately that are going to be here long after any one administration stays or goes. That's where the power needs to lie.
I keep saying it, we need to stop putting so much emphasis on the red or the yellow or the green or whatever other color out there. And I mean, we just came off of the heels of our independence celebrations. The colors that we need to be focusing on unite us all.
Right.
The aquamarine, the black, and the gold.
Right.
Nation has to be first, not your political party, not your own personal agenda, not, just what's good for you and yours, but the whole nation has to be put first.
And this is an issue, I think, that binds us as a nation. And I think, again, there's, we recognize and see the value of political parties and affiliation, and understanding that you have people who have common philosophies that connect with. But in this instance, we need citizens to feel like they have a role and that they have a voice. We hold a quarterly session called Freedom Schools. And Freedom Schools are where people can learn about the system of government, but they also can develop skills of advocacy, so they can feel more comfortable to talk to their member of parliament, to write a letter, to speak up about something that's concerning. So that's another opportunity that people feel like, well, I've never done this before. Well, there are free opportunities for you to be able to do that. So taking advantage of free opportunities, whether through org or any of the other groups that are out there, Rise Bahamas that talks about local government, or One-a-Luthra that's doing some really strong, community-based stuff, or Lend a Hand that has a really grassroots effort. All of these initiatives are ways for you to get involved and join with folks who might have a like mind. And then it becomes not just on you as an individual, but on you as a community.
Matt, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very
I know
much.
you're going to bring a lot of meat, and you certainly delivered today. Thank you very, very much for being here.
We're so glad to be here anytime you need us.
Thank you. That's my time. Got to get out of here. Tomorrow is Wellness Wednesday, and we're going to be talking about a matter that is important to your health, so don't you miss it. I'm Michelle Malcolm. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Gone.
Global 99.5 FM reminds our listeners that the views and opinions